what happened to you was a terrible nightmare. You almost lost your life. You were always a athletic, strong guy, and all of a sudden you see yourself paralyzed, going through this huge recovery.
Yeah.
Any normal person goes into depression. The first thing they do is, I don't want to live anymore. Forget the business. How do you pull yourself out? What was your mental processing to actually generate what you just did? Because that was a huge breakthrough. Welcome to the Break Free Podcast. I am your host, David Mancela. This podcast, as everybody knows, is dedicated to honor the people that are changing this world for a better place by running incredible organizations. And today we have with us one of those amazing people. Ryan, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, David. What's up, man? It's good to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you too. Ryan, not that I want to bother you up, but out of a lot of entrepreneurs that I know, you are the one that knows how to automate business and how to actually simplify things. And that's why, our relationship is so beautiful, because me, I'm all about that, right? I'm all about automation and how to make things simpler and achieve maximum results with minimum effort, right?
Yeah, 100%.
But before we dive deep into your life experience, tell me your full name, where do you live, and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, my name is Ryan Crownholm, and I live currently in Southern California in a town called San Marino, which is just next to South Pasadena. And I am an entrepreneur. I'm a formerly military guy. I from when I got out, I had started a hauling company, grew it into a good-sized demolition general engineering company. That was really hard work. I've since then transitioned more into technology, and so that's much easier. Just pluses and minuses and zeros, and on a computer, and money just flows in. And so no more swinging sledgehammers and shovels and.
Welcome to my world, but it's not as easy. But you make it sound super easy. But I run 6 other computer technology companies, and yeah, it's scalable, but it's not as easy.
I'll say physically, at the end of the day, I used to come home and lay on the floor from physical exhaustion. So when I say hard, I mean, physically hard. I understand technology is not easy, but I don't go home and lay on the floor completely wiped out, staring at the ceiling anymore. That doesn't happen. I still got energy left.
Ryan, that a lot of the people that I know, very successful entrepreneurs like you that I know, a lot of them have military training in common.
Yeah.
I was in the military for 2 years. How long were you in the military for?
I was in for 3 years. I was stationed in Germany and did a deployment to Bosnia. That was back in the 90s, though. It was 96 until 99. So it's been 20-something years since I was in. What branch were you in?
I actually went to military school to become an official. So I did 2 years. Yeah. So that was fascinating. I was very young, but it gave me all the skills that I needed to actually thrive in life.
For me, I learned all of the things that I didn't want to do professionally. I don't want to work for anyone else. I don't want to be an employee. We work in the military, very top down, very like the structure of the military just didn't work for me. But it sort of taught me what might work for me. And so after coming out of there, it kind of set me on a really good path, and also helped me with establishing discipline, which is really, really important in entrepreneurship.
For sure. And that's one of the things that a lot of new entrepreneurs are missing. I see all these kids, especially now money is becoming a little bit scarce, but we've been in an abundance of funding for startups, and these kids, they come with an idea and they get $2 million from somebody, and they don't have the discipline, right? And before you know, they lose the money, or they don't use it properly, and they're back to ground zero, right?
It's easy to risk someone else's capital to test your ideas, but when you're using your own capital, I mean, the only funding I took for my first business was a student loan, which was a non-forgivable student loan. And instead of using it for living expenses, I used it to buy a dump truck, and then grew it from there. And so I've never raised money from anyone for any of my businesses. And so I'm a bootstrapper, and that's just sort of really feels like what the heart of entrepreneurship is.
That's for sure. Wow. Okay, let's look back because
Yeah.
I want to know what happened in your mind that you actually went to military and got deployed to Bosnia. You know, that was one of the most horrible wars in Europe, right? So let's say, where were you when you were like 18 years old or 17 and you were about to graduate high school? What was in your mind?
Yeah, so I was not much of a student. I probably was pretty high level ADHD, very distracted, only cared about what I cared about, and so the things that they were teaching me in school, I was not interested in, and so I went out and started working full time. By the time I was, I don't know, a sophomore in high school, so I would work in restaurants, and I did bar backing and busboy and waiter, and so I was just really busy. And so when I graduated from high school, college wasn't really on the radar for me at the time. And so I moved to San Diego and was kind of bumming around and having a good time. Realized that wasn't going to get me anywhere. And I thought, well, I just need to shake things up. And so I went and talked to a recruiter and said, I'd like to get some money for college and I'd like to get a duty station in Europe. I'd like to leave the country for a while and see what it's about. I really wanted to shake things up. And so he said, sure. Yeah, I tested high enough. And so I was able to get, $25,000 for college, so I ended up going to college after I got out and did that European duty station in Germany. Was great because I got a lot of experience. But as soon as I landed on the ground, almost immediately trained me and put me on a C-130 and shipped me down to Bosnia for a deployment, which is a NATO. It was a peacekeeping mission, so it wasn't. It was basically enforcing the Dayton Peace Accord. So we had already sort of stopped Slobodan Milosevic from his the things that he was doing against Bosnia, and so I wasn't involved in any combat. There was at the time it was some people would throw rocks at us, or some old coot with a shotgun might fire at us if we're driving by or something, but it was never like what the guys are dealing with. A lot of my friends dealt with in Iraq and Afghanistan,
like full on war, right?
Yeah, right. So
that's incredible. So from just lazing around, you just chose the most strict, hardest path to get to college.
Well, I don't know if I would have gone otherwise. And to be honest, even after I got out of the military, I kind of went to college because they were paying me this $1,200 a month tax-free. And it just so happened that amount covered my rent and my car payment. And so then plus the bartending, it was actually, it was making pretty good money. And I'm like, hey, as long as I'm going to school, they're going to keep paying me. And so I went. Otherwise, I don't know if I would have. I knew that I was going to work for myself, and I didn't know that the college degree was going to do much for me. And so I got a bachelor's degree, actually a double major in economics and business administration, but I put it at the bottom of the drawer somewhere, and I've never used it for anything. So
crazy. 3 years in the military overseas, and even for a peacekeeping mission, you must have had quite a journey there, right?
Yeah, I mean, as a young man, certainly, I had a lot of friends that were in college, and they were, writing me about the weekend parties that they were going to and the keg stands and all the things that college kids do, having a good time. And I was doing zone of separation patrols, walking around with my M16 and doing weapons counts, and it was different, and seeing what the ravages of war really are, and also understanding that those people in those places that we would watch on the news, on 24-hour news here in America, they're just people, and their lives have been shattered because before I went there, I think that for me, I would see those things on the news and it'd be like, oh, those are just those crazy people over there getting in wars and killing each other. And, it just sort of woke up something in me, like another level of compassion, for what war is. It's just terrible.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I went to military school is because my brother got killed in the war. The country I come from, it was in a 36-year-old war, basically communist against capitalists, right? So the United States fighting against Russia, well, the Soviet Union really back then, in foreign land, right? So in little tiny countries like mine. My brother was 28 and he got killed in the war. So I developed this desire to fly airplanes. The guy that was dating my older sister, he was an airplane pilot, so he would take me on his plane, and I just fell in love with it. So I told my dad, hey, Dad, I want to become a pilot. And he said, I don't have the money for that type of school. So he says the only way for you to become a pilot is you go you become an officer, and then you actually get the government to pay for it.
Yeah.
That's why I went to military school. But my dad later on in life, he told me, one of the reasons why I encourage you, because I didn't want you to end up like your brother, without any training, without knowing how to defend yourself, right?
Yeah.
So thank God I never had to experience war, but I know what you mean, and I have been personally affected by it.
Yeah.
And thank God, the good guys won, and we still have democracy in that country and rule of law, but I'm talking about these things because people don't realize that freedom has a huge price.
Yeah, that's right.
And then when they start trying to impose socialism on us, and they try to impose like fake socialism, and at the end it's actually communism that comes behind that. Loss of freedom in exchange of peace and security. That's the most horrible thing people can choose, and they are choosing these things little by little. They are choosing these things voluntarily.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, what's going on? Like, how many people died for us to have democracy and freedom, so that people come in and just give it away because they want fake peace and fake security?
This is why history is so important, David. If there's one thing you need to study is history, because otherwise we just repeat the same mistakes over and over again. And I just watching what's happening right now in Israel and Palestine just makes me so sad on both sides, because there's just death and destruction and families that are being separated. And it's horrible. Nothing good ever comes out of war, although it's necessary. If it would be nice to live in a world where it wasn't necessary, but unfortunately, times come where there's no other option, and it doesn't make it any less sad.
It's crazy. So you came back from your service. By the way, thank you for your service. What did you do? You went to college?
Yeah, I did. I came out, I got a job. Originally, I was a pretty big kid back then. So I got a job as a bouncer at a bar, and then eventually, ended up being a bartender there, and went to a junior college, and I did pretty well there. And then I got a full scholarship to a private university in Northern California called St. Mary's. And I got my degree there in business and economics. And then while I was there, I started my first company, and it was a hauling and junk removal company. This is way before there was a 1-800-GOT-JUNK or any of those guys. And I had, by the time I graduated, I had a fleet of trucks and a pretty good crew of guys.
Wow.
I think by the time I graduated, I think we did about $1 million in revenue.
That's
and so
crazy.
I thought, hey, this is pretty good, this entrepreneur stuff. And I was able to quit my restaurant job and go out and haul people's garbage. And
that's incredible. How did you get that idea?
So it was a guy that came into the bar, and he had a company like this, and I went out and worked with him one day and thought, hey, this is a cool business, and it's something, back then I had going for me that I was strong, but I had no skills. And so I thought, hey, I'm strong, I can do this. Like I don't, if he'd have been a plumber or something, then I'd been like, I don't know how to do plumbing or electrician, but it was just like, I can take junk and load it on a truck and take it to the dumps. And so I did that, and then I got, I built, a pretty good sized company around it eventually. But we had moved from, just the simple hauling, which was like a trailer behind my truck, into dump truck, and then a bigger dump truck, and then eventually roll off, and dumpsters and big tractors and excavators. And so I grew it into a general engineering company. And along the way had started a handful of other companies, such as I had electronics recycling and property preservation, and I tried a lot of other businesses along the way.
That is crazy. So actually, by the time you graduated, you were already selling $1 million a year.
Yeah. Yep. So there was.
How old were you?
Well, because I went to college a little bit later, so I didn't start college until I was 23. So I was probably 26, somewhere around there, 26 or 27 by the time I graduated. And so I was doing what I could do and learning skills that I could leverage. And so this was part, I come from a family where my dad is a very hard worker. He was also a business owner. He also sold stationery supplies. My grandfather worked in construction his whole life, owned construction businesses. I think we're a lot of people who probably aren't great at working for other people. So we end up working for ourselves. And so, but there was a lot of things that sort of in this almost like this Protestant work ethic and like the military about lead from the front, and you need to be out there with your crews and out working and motivating. And I did that. And so that $2 million mark for a long time was a threshold. It held me back right there because I thought that in order to grow my business, I had to go out there and do more and more. And that's where, eventually the book, I talk about how, I made the transition from being stuck there into to growing what are actual businesses, instead of just being self-employed.
Ryan, I actually had the pleasure to review your book. And one of the reasons why I invited you to this podcast is to actually talk about the book, but your life experience is fascinating. If we run out of time, we're going to get another podcast going with episode 2. That doesn't happen very often, but I have the feeling that with you, we're going to have to go deeper into it. So, because I want to take my time, I don't want to rush, because you are a wealth of information.
To some people.
Ryan, did the college training help you at all to run your business?
Well, yeah, there were some particular classes that, and this is something I do even now. If I can apply it directly to my business as I'm learning it, it's useful. If it's something theoretical that maybe I'll use someday in the future, it's worthless. And so college has a mix of both. So I had like an operations class that I was learning and I was applying to my business. I had a business law class that I was like you can't live in California, own a business and not understand law. And so that I was able to directly apply. So some of the finance classes, some of them that I was actually able to really look at my business, those ones I retained. But those are all things that I could have very easily gone on YouTube or gone somewhere else and learned the information. So I don't know if the college degree itself was overly useful to me. Except for the fact that I say, I graduated from college. I guess there's some people that'll judge you if you don't.
Yeah, but if you're in business, who cares, right?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
You mentioned that you were stuck at the $1 or $2 million mark because you thought that you had to do more by yourself in order to grow, and you only have so many hours in the day. How long did you do that for until you realized that you were doing something wrong?
Till I was 31. So I was, I graduated, like I said, probably when I was around 27, and I continued running the business and was fairly stuck for quite a while. I mean, I owned a nice house and I had nice cars. I mean, I had grown a life for myself, and by all metrics, I was probably a successful sort of business owner. But I didn't make the transition yet to sort of being a real entrepreneur, meaning like, growing something that actually ran with or without you. And so it was, I think we've talked about this before, but it was July 3rd, 2007, went to a job site, doing what I did. So I pulled up in my 1-ton dually crew cab, and I was pulling a 10,000 pound trailer behind me with a big T190 Bobcat on it. And I set the truck, and one of my guys went to download the tractor off of it, and it was on a little bit of a slope. There were some jacks in the back. The jacks snapped, truck went rolling down the hill. I looked up the hill and it just hit me. It ran me over. It drug me down the street underneath it. I pulled myself out from under the truck, and my femur was snapped in half and sticking out of my jeans. My tibia was broken in half. My lungs had been punctured because my ribs were broken and went into my lungs. My shoulder was shattered. I lost a bunch of blood and skin. It was really bad. I got to a trauma center within probably 30 minutes. It was really fast. Otherwise, I probably would not be here talking to you right now. I went through 12 hours of trauma surgery. And then over the next 2 years, I had an additional 5 or 6 surgeries of just putting me back together, re-rods and bone grafts and skin grafts. And so during that time, obviously, I had 2 broken legs. I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't go out and work with the guys anymore. I couldn't lead from the front the way that I thought that was the right way to run a business. And so it was the first time where I had to sit back and go, okay, well, what can I do? And that's where I just started looking at, okay, well, the housing market was starting to correct. I've got a bunch of trucks and a bunch of guys that, eventually are going to be out of work if I don't figure something out. And so I did things like I had a Google AdWords guy create a campaign with like, here's 50 services that we can do. Let's see which ones bite. And so he went out and he did that, and we built, and actually one of them that popped up that was really popular was pool removal. I said, okay, we can remove pools.
So basically what you guys did is you discovered 50 things that you could do with your guys and your trucks.
Yes.
Different things. And then you advertise for all of them on Google, right?
Yep. Tested them all. Yep, to see what would kick off, and pool removal was one of them. And pool removals were actually something that I could do very profitably. And so, I could charge $10,000 or $20,000 for a pool removal, and I could generally do them for around $3,000 to $5,000 would be my cost on them. So it was really good margin. And so I hired a geotech soils engineer to work with me to create the processes that we would use to make sure we were doing everything right. Got a couple extra pieces of equipment, and then started a blog, which became actually a global reference for on the internet for people reaching out for me from Australia and England about how to remove a pool. So perfected the processes, and ultimately we ended up, when I sold that company, we were doing 300 pools a year, so about five plus pools a week.
So I guess when people go into big problems financially, as the 2008 crash, they don't need their pools anymore because they cannot sustain them, right?
So these were, I was in the Bay Area, and so there wasn't that many swimmable days anyhow. It's a little chillier up in the Bay Area than it is down here in LA. And so, when things would start to fail, you'd say, well, we can spend, $80,000 remodeling the pool, or we can spend, let's say, $15,000 and just have it gone. And that was the decision a lot of people were making. It was a better financial decision. And so it wasn't something I would have just guessed, because I just think, hey, removing your pools, and it's an extra expense that people don't want to do on a down economy, but it ended up being the cheaper option. So that was a good one. And then also we had a problem, when I was going through my P&L, there was a bunch of new laws in California about recycling electronics. And so we started spending a lot of money on TVs, CRTs, refrigerators, appliances. And so I thought, well, if the landfills are recycling them, why can't I? And so I went down to the state of California and said, hey, I want one of these licenses where I can recycle all my own stuff. And they said, well, there's more to it than that, Mr. Crownholm. You can't just come in here and ask for a license. And I go, okay, well, tell me what I need to do. So I ended up eventually talked them into it, and they gave me a license, and I opened my own recycling center at first, where we were just recycling the guys that bring our own stuff back. And then I thought, hey, we're on a busy street. Let's put an A-frame sign out there and see if other people want to drop there. And so before long, we had a full-fledged recycling center happening. And then I opened a second location, and then we were doing events all over the Bay Area. And so we were doing fundraisers and other things. And so this ended up being another really great profit stream. And all because I was now sitting back, as I am now, behind a computer instead of being out in the field. You couldn't actually walk, right? I couldn't. And then so I thought, well, shoot, now I'm looking around and all I see is foreclosures everywhere. There's got to be something we can do for those guys. I'm going to call up some of these banks and these realtors and ask them if we can help. And so I went to them and I said, we can offer services. We can board up houses. We can weed whack properties. We can put up smoke detectors. We can strap water heaters. We can get these properties all packaged up so you hand them over to the bank and then they can sell them. And they thought, that's great. So we ended up doing hundreds of homes a month. Doing these, which kept all my guys busy. My guys were all great. They, I told them, hey, I know you'd rather be, operating equipment and driving trucks, but if I asked you to clean a toilet, would you do it? If it meant keep working? And they said, yeah. I said, okay, good. So I kept everybody. I never laid anyone off. And so, it was that accident, although it was a terrible timing and it was an awful lot to go through, it may have saved my business. And certainly transform me as an entrepreneur.
Now, how would you recommend people to get that mindset, Ryan? Because what happened to you was a terrible nightmare. You almost lost your life. You were always a athletic, strong guy, and all of a sudden you see yourself paralyzed, going through this huge recovery. Yeah. Any normal person goes into depression. The first thing they do is, I don't want to live anymore. Forget the business. How do you pull yourself out? What was your mental process into actually generate what you just did? Because that was a huge breakthrough.
Yeah. First off, I was not paralyzed. I had 2 broken legs, and I was having troubles getting to the heel, but I was not paralyzed. So at least I knew that I would eventually recover. It just was taking a very long time to recover. It would take a lot of surgeries. So I was very fortunate, because it could have gone many other ways. Realistically, I had the thoughts of, hey, running a business is hard. And if ever there was an excuse to close the business down, it's like, oh, I had I had a crash and this happened and I just let my business go. And then I could have gone and worked for somebody else. And the thought crossed my mind. It was hard, but then I just made a decision. I said, no, like, let's look at what I have. When I first got out of the military, I just said, what do I have? I'm of probably of average IQ, probably average intelligence, but I'm strong and I can do a lot. Like, I can do a lot physically. And so I leverage that into an income and into a business. And so now I'm back in another position again. And I say, okay, now what do I have? I've got 7 years experience running a business. I know the intricacies of it. I understand things about, what my business does, but I haven't spent any time on the inside fixing it, creating systems. Like, what does it look like without me? And so I had to look at my people. I had to look at my processes. I had to look at my systems. I had to look at all these things that I just simply hadn't looked at before. And so, I would say, for your question about how I could talk any other people into taking this sort of holistic approach of their business or looking at it from the outside, would say, imagine that tomorrow you got hit by a truck. You're not going to, or you went to jail, or you had a mental breakdown, or whatever it might be. Write a list of all the things that would have to happen, and who would do them. And maybe create a manual. So you could hand that over to a person and say, hey, I'm in the hospital. I need you to keep my business running. Here's the manual. And so at least it's documented, because you could run a business for 20 years. And if you don't have something, you can go out of business and just be gone, just because you didn't want to take the time to write this down. The next step is take that manual and just start working through each line item. Get rid of them, meaning systematize or get people or whatever it is, and work through that list until there's nothing left on that list, which means you can at any time walk out of your office and disappear for a week, and your business keeps running. Then you can start to stop putting out fires and actually start focusing on where the growth is. So all of my time now is focused on, where do I 10x my business? What are the things that I can do to take things to the next level? Because the business, the way it's set up, it'll run and it'll grow. It doesn't need me. I've got systems and feedback loops and people and processes. Like, that's good. And so yeah, that's what I would encourage everyone to do. Create an artificial emergency, disappear.
Beautiful. Ryan, most business owners never get to that point. They get stuck between $1 and $2 million forever until they decide to shut down their operations when they want to retire. That's it.
Yep. That's where I was, David. I was driving my pickup truck, and I was about 50 pounds overweight, and I was, making myself I probably had a $600,000 paycheck. I thought that was an ungodly amount of money at the amount of time. But man, I was putting in a lot of work for it. But there's a lot more possibility out there.
It's funny, I'm a man of faith, right? And, when you look at my faith, every time that you have a big obstacle, for me, it's an opportunity to jump to the next level based on what I believe, right? Based on my Christian faith. So everything that happens to me, this is my conviction. Everything that happens to me is going to work out better for me, regardless how bad it is, because I love Jesus Christ. Yeah, I just quoted Romans 8:28. It's actually in the Bible. So that's what has put me through disasters in my life, but nothing compares to what you just went through, right? And it's incredible, because that's exactly what you did. You said, how do I take this into my own advantage? How do I not only survive, but I actually thrive? And I bet because you were able to automate your business, that's like allowing you to run multiple businesses now. Because now the sky is the limit, right?
100%. Yeah, I like I said, I felt very fortunate in retrospect that I went through that, and I'm back at almost 100%. I feel for my recovery, I couldn't have asked for anything more. So I'm very grateful. So somebody put me through it for good reason,
right? Ryan, tell me about your book. What inspired you to write it?
Yeah, so I've spent 20 plus years of growing businesses, and I have a lot of knowledge that could be really useful to a lot of people. I've been, mentoring guys through like an organization like Defy Ventures, where we help guys getting out of prison. And I go to the halfway houses and I help teach them how to leverage their skills into a job. We have an entrepreneur and training program or I'm mentoring. And so I help these guys, basically taking whatever it is, whether they used to be a carpenter before they went in, or a trades guy, or maybe just a strong guy, and seeing what we can do, because no one wants to hire them. And so I'm working with them, working with veterans, working with small business owners. I think by the way, I think I told you I had cancer last year as well, and got over that. And there's part of me when you get older where you're just like, well, I've got all this information that other people could use, and so I can keep it to myself and die with it, or I could put a book together and just have it, for my kids or for people that I think could use it or whatever, something to hand out. And so I just started writing. I had moved to Colorado at the time, and I started journaling, and I spent quite a few months just journaling down, sort of the real core principles of what have, helped to make my business successful. And so I made what I think is a very simple, easy read for entrepreneurs at any level. To some, it might just be a bunch of reminders about things that you should be doing, but you're not doing. And to the others, maybe there's some revelations in there of good ways to structure your business. And so that was really I think I wrote it just to share knowledge.
Beautiful. What a better way to actually leave a legacy. And this is one of the reasons why I have this podcast, Ryan. I've been doing this for 3 years now. And the more I do it, the more I fall in love with it, because it's not only my knowledge now, it's amazing people like you, right? And if I can do whatever I can to share your knowledge through the world, I will. Because This is, like you said, we reach to a point in our life where, like you, financially we're probably set forever. Because the older you get, the less you need to, right? Yeah. And the more you realize that money is just a tool. It will never provide you with happiness, but it sure helps to be comfortable.
Well, money, I look at money for me as time, and so I use money to buy time. So yeah. I never balk at buying time, because I like to spend time traveling, enjoying time with the family. There's other things I like to do besides working. So right. Money provides that for me.
And what a better way to do it through your own business. I mean, this is one of the reasons, the biggest reasons that I started my own business was because of that. I wanted to run my own calendar. So after being 10 years in corporate, I'm like, okay, it's time to try it out. But I fell into the same trap as you did. At the beginning, I was so scared, right?
There's no other way to make it. Here, I mean, you're in Canada, but here in America, going and working for a company and trying to, establish a life for yourself, at least here in California, is not possible. They just simply don't pay enough. You have to work for yourself. You have to be an entrepreneur. I mean, in companies, if you do find a really good paying job, they'll use you for a few years and then throw you out. I mean, it's just not, you're so much better. And so this is what I teach, my kids. Is when you grow up, you need to know how to start your own business and leverage whatever unique skills you pick up along the way into making your own money.
Yeah. But you also need the discipline, Ryan, because you actually were able to go through that border, that wall that was keeping you from growing, because you had the discipline. And because this is what I see, a lot of people go into business because they want to have freedom of time, but they end up being in jail living more, because they never find the freedom of time. They may get successful, but they still have this mindset that I have to do more to get more.
Yeah.
Instead of delegating and creating systems, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and understanding when there's, when you've had enough too. I have enough, and so everything I do now is through passion. I mean, I still run 2 businesses, but everything else I do, the speaking or the book and some of the coaching and stuff, I really do it out of passion because I love it.
Right. Yeah. Same with me. Right. I'm in this point in my life where I'm running about 7 businesses. Everything is doing all right, and I can actually invest my time blessing other people by sharing stories like yours. Right.
Yeah. Amazing, David.
If you have the book with you, can you show it on the screen, please, and just tell me what the book name is? Yeah.
So the book is The Hustle Trap, and The Hustle Trap is what I just described. It's that point where people grow a successful business. You know, they take it from 0 to 1. So maybe that's $1 million or $2 million. And then they're in over their head. They're running like crazy. They're trying to keep up with the business. They're stressed out. They feel like they can't grow anymore. And it's because they're stuck in the hustle trap. It's because the hustle that gets you from 0 to 1 is the same thing that's going to hold you back from getting to 2 to 3 to 4, like the next steps. So there's a shift that has to happen. You can't get around the hustle. As you know, when you start a business, you can't, all the guys on the internet are just telling you how to, you know, post 3 times a week on Instagram and make $1 million a year. They're full of it. They haven't done it themselves. They're trying to get their 49 bucks out of you. The truth is, it's hard. It's really hard to start a business. And often people think that the starting a business is the same as running a business, and it's not. And so the book is just talking about, number one, I go through and I say, there's a lot of things mentally that need to change about the way that you think. You know, you need to understand that, you know, you can't be the most important person in your business anymore. It means you have to understand that you have to have faith in your people. You have to trust them. You have to know how to hire good people. You have to not be afraid of money. It turns out a lot of people have a lot of hesitation towards making money. It almost feels unethical if they make too much money. Oh, I only need this. I don't need anything more than this. And it's like, well, if you had more, you might be happier. And if you had more, you might be able to actually work less and have a better life. So anyhow, I try to talk people through some of the thought processes that I had to go through, some sort of limiting beliefs about the wild abundance of money. You look at the government here, they just print money like crazy. It just flies off the printing press. It's almost infinite, but we have 24 hours in the day. And so you don't trade your limited resource for an unlimited resource. And so, you know, the idea of scaling and of systems and people is to make yourself match the resource of money, meaning make your time infinite. And you can do this through leverage, right? And so once you understand that and you set up the systems and the feedback loops, then you can start to get your business where it can just grow, and you don't need to be there. And so, you know, I talk very deeply about, you know, the importance of people, the structures that I use, the importance of systems, and then also just when you do find that success, you know, opportunity is very difficult to come across when you have nothing, but once you have something, opportunities start to overwhelm you, and you have to learn how to say no. And you know, there's a whole different set of things that start to happen. And so I just kind of went through, and this isn't just based off of my experience, although the book talks a lot about my experiences. I have a vast network of entrepreneurs that I work with, and all of them have exactly the same sort of obstacles that they go through in transitions. And the successful ones have figured it out. And so that was really the point that I tried to tackle, was helping people to get out of the hustle trap. So maybe somebody who already has a business going, but just feels like they're in over their head.
Beautiful, Ryan. I have 1,000 more questions to ask you. We're running out of time on this episode. I want to respect your time. Thank you so much for being here. We will record a second part of this podcast. I want to go a little bit deeper into the book and some of the key lessons. And again, it's because I feel you, like I was exactly what you did. I had a heart attack. That's how much I was into the hustle trap. So I want to share my story with you and how I was able to get out of it. But if I would have had a book like yours, it would have taken me probably a lot less, and maybe I would have avoided that heart attack. Right?
Yeah. Wow, that's a crazy story, David. Wow, I can't wait to hear it. So yeah, let's get together. We'll do a second part 2.
Ryan, before you leave, one last question. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
What would I write in it? I guess, you know, I would say go on a walk. Something simple. Yeah, I'll tell you, I just came back. I spent the weekend up in Sequoia by myself with a backpack on. I wore my body out, but I sat at the side of this little lake way up in the mountains, and I just thought. And I think that a lot of people just don't spend enough time thinking. I think that there's just too many distractions out there in the world. And so if I could put a billboard up that just says, go on a walk, leave your phone at home. I think people just need to, there's so much information coming in all the time. So they're taking time to ingest information, but no time to digest it. And so that's what I would say.
Beautiful. I just did that this morning. I thought I was going to go to my prayer room and pray and meditate for 10 minutes, and ended up being almost an hour and a half. Amazing. Where I just had the chance just to reflect and relax and put things in perspective. And then the result is I start my day in this beautiful state where everything lights off, right?
Well, that's right. And then it makes everything that you are working on far more productive as well. The mornings are super important, as far as just creating that space for yourself. It sets you up for more success. So good for you.
And you know what, Ryan? This is why people need to learn what you're doing, because before I didn't have the time to do that because I was running everything by myself.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So that's the problem is if you're stuck in the hustle trap, will you have time to read the hustle trap? I don't know. We'll see.
Brother, thank you so much for your time. I'll see you on the next episode. God bless, and please keep growing and sharing your knowledge.
All right. Thanks, David. Great to see you.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.